Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum. I'm your host Faisal Raza and you are watching Foresight. Viewers, as you all know, that after 15 months of acute genocide in Gaza, then there was a little pause for at least 1.5 months. It was really a sigh of relief for the residents of this unfortunate enclave. But unfortunately, soon after that, on March 18th, unilaterally illegitimate state of Israel not only broken that ceasefire, but also speeded up its invasion and genocidal war within Gaza. And the killing machine right now is on. And nobody is going to stop it. Nobody even dare to. An international system seems to be crippled. As the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said, and I quote, more than an entire month has passed without a drop of aid into Gaza. No food, no fuel, no water, no medicine, no commercial supplies. As aid has dried up, the floodgates of horror have reopened. Gaza is a killing field and civilians are in an endless death loop. Absolutely true, because since 18th of March 2025, an estimated 0.5 million innocent civilians have been displaced. And this is beyond dozens of displacements within Gaza, unfortunately. Sometimes it's from northern Gaza to central Gaza, then to southern Gaza, then again from southern to central Gaza, and this is the gameplay which is on. And unfortunately, so far, at least more than 1,500 innocent people, majority of them are the women and children, they have been killed after 18th of March. Since October 7, 2023, there have been more than 51,000 people, innocent lives lost. And at least 116,000 or over that, more than that, people have been injured. And there is no hospital which is giving full treatment to any injured. And the injuries are unprecedented. Unfortunately, the game of the political negotiations, talks and gossips and all that is going on, and the world is actually just watching. Most unfortunate thing is that United States on one side is a part of ceasefire negotiations within Egypt with the help of Egyptian government, along with that Qatar and all other parties. But on the other hand, they are supplying arms, ammunition to Israel. And not only that, they are stressing upon Reviria plan as well. When we are talking about the European Union, they are mum right now. Even France is a bit vocal and they called upon that these sufferings of the Palestinians must end. But on the other hand, France has not put any sort of embargo on supplying arms to Israel. But at the same time, France and Saudi Arabia, they are planning to have an international conference in United Nations in June this year to have the Palestinian statehood. On the other side, Syria and Lebanon, the situation is not somewhat different there because Israel is invading into Lebanon and capturing most of the areas and then invading from south of Syria, and they are just 60 kilometers away from Damascus right now, and they have seized most of the area, not only the Golan Heights, but also most of the areas within the Syrian territory. And there is also a tussle going on between Turkey and Israel as well. So talking on these aspects, this is very important. Right now, it's a very dire situation in Middle East. To talk on that, we have in our studio Mr. Faraz Naqvi. He is head of Iran program at the Institute of Regional Studies, Islamabad. Thank you very much, Faraz, for your presence here. And with him, Rida Tanvir. She is the Middle Eastern Affairs expert. Thank you very much, Rida, for your presence in the studios. And online joining us, Syed Basim Raza. He is the research associate at Center for Law and Security, CLAS. Thank you very much, Basim, for your presence online. Faraz, my first question. As we all know that the situation is extremely dire, and very disturbing at the hands of Israel's continuous atrocities in the CEO. As it continuously displacing the residents of Gaza within, forcibly transferring them to the small areas, and then a massacre through the brutal bombardment and the ground invasion as well. Rapidly cutting northern and the southern Gaza, particularly Rafah from Khan Yunis, and then declared entire area between Philadelphia corridor and the Murag axis as a so-called buffer or the security zone. It seems that Israel has a complete wipeout plan in Gaza. Is it true?
Well, Faisal, thank you so much for inviting me to your show. Well, we have been talking this time and again that it is essentially the vision of Israel to expand not only towards Gaza but also towards the West Bank as well. As per the UNRWA report, it has been 7 weeks since a single drop of aid has been transferred to the Gaza people. And right now, Gaza is experiencing the worst humanitarian crisis, more catastrophic than the start of the war in October 2023. So yes, it is precisely the plan. So what basically Israel aims to do is to have the northern Gaza completely annexed into the mainland Israeli territory, so as to implement the settlement plan there. And then the other portion would be called the buffer zone or the security zone, so as to repel any attack that has to be launched in future by Hamas or any other non-state group there. So this is precisely the plan, and to somewhat expel the Palestinian to the neighboring state, because we all know that the Rafah or the southern part of the Gaza does not have the capacity to accommodate all of the 2.1 million Gaza people. So eventually the plan is to somehow squeeze the livelihood standards there, so that they would be compelled to be expelled into the neighboring states, for example Egypt or Jordan. Now the point is whether Egypt or Jordan or elsewhere, would they be able, or would they be acceptable to would they be convinced that they should accommodate the Palestinian? I think that would be very
But the
crucial.
first question is whether Palestinians, and particularly the residents of Gaza, whether they are willing to go to any other country, because they are determined to live on their land, whatever happens, because they are ready for everything. And till now, what happened in last 2.5 years, this is completely a hell. So.
Definitely, Faisal. But the thing is that they have systematically sidelined the resistance group which are present in Gaza, although they are resisting against the Israeli operation, but their capacity has been shrunk by the leadership assassination as well as the intelligence failure. So I think it would be very difficult for them as of now to enforce their will onto the Israeli and to come to the negotiation table with Israel on equal terms. I think that is not what Israel basically aims to do.
Your point well taken. Rida, UN Human Rights Commission said that at least 36 out of total 224 strikes between March 18th till April 9th, 2025, Israel killed majority of Palestinian women and children in Gaza. Meanwhile, so far, more than 1,500 innocent people lost their lives in Gaza after the recent genocidal campaign started by Israel, while a cumulative death toll reached more than, other estimates tell us 61,000, but it's more than 51,000, and over 116,000 others severely injured, while Gaza has right now no trace of water, food, medicine or shelter. So how do you see overall situation? Because it's a dire one, it's kind of a famine over there, and it's again hunger and starvation what Israel is actually using against the innocent people of Gaza.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much for inviting me, Faisal. The question over here, whether the situation that you have described is dire, indeed it is. The war began with Hamas versus Israel, but now this war has basically resulted in casualty, which includes men, women and children as well, and children, some of whom were not even born yet. And the situation is basically described by some of the human rights experts as collective punishment, which is actually forbidden, or it is prohibited under the international humanitarian laws. So the situation obviously
is it really any humanitarian law exists right now when it comes to Gaza?
Well, in books, yes. But if we talk in terms of, in fact, it exists or not, frankly, I haven't seen any such thing in Palestine so far. So the human rights does exist. Human rights do exist, I'm sorry, but they exist when it comes to those human rights which are concerning Israel or which are concerning the hostages which have been taken by Hamas. But as far as the people of Palestine are considered, the human rights, I think, don't
And accumulatively, if we consider not for Muslims, but for any other ethnicity, those human rights exist, really.
Well, right now in Palestine, there are not only Muslims who are being killed, there are Christians who are being targeted as well. But the question is that whether the situation of Palestine is being taken seriously by the world, no, it is not. And the situation in Palestine actually requires some collective action. And that collective action does not mean that you are just going to be boycotting some products and this and that. No, it doesn't mean. It means that the entire Muslim world has to come together.
Yes.
And the Muslim world has strategic choke points. You see, they have Babel Mandab, they have Strait of Hormuz, they have Suez Canal.
But Houthis trying hard to have that.
Exactly.
They have resisted so far.
Exactly. If we use
occupation.
these choke points, I'm sure we can basically pressurize this, you can say, the world into basically coming together to listen at least to whatever is happening in Palestine, and that might actually push them into coming to some sort of
Your thoughts are absolutely correct and really appreciated, but unfortunately we don't think so that we have kind of a leadership across the Muslim world if that going to have some sort of a stand against Israel and
that disharmony is actually
and the atrocities going on, the genocide, the ethnic cleansing, the war crimes which are committed by Netanyahu and his cabinet right now. So, Faraz, despite of Arab countries' alternative plan of Gaza reconstruction and rejection of the US and Israel's Rivera plan, Trump, Netanyahu dark vision again come into play when there was a meeting of both in Washington. And we have heard it before media, what they spoke, to seize the Gaza Strip, forcefully displace all Palestinians from their land and build that accordingly. When the US president called Gaza a piece of real estate rather than the Palestinian land, while it's also emphasized that if US so-called peace forces there to control and own the Gaza Strip would be a good thing. So what do you think, what would be the ultimate future of the innocent Palestinians in the backdrop of the Israel-US plans?
Well, Faisal, if we look at the Trump's vision, President Trump claims to be the champion of ceasefires or the champions of deals. But when it comes to the Palestinian issue, I think if Trump administration or the US is really sincere, then Netanyahu would be the last person to be consulted with on the issue of Palestine, because there is a divergence of opinion. While I do not doubt the intentions of US administration in really coming to some sort of a ceasefire deal, whether that would be acceptable or not acceptable to the Palestinian or the regional countries. But I do really consider doubtful the intentions of Israel and Netanyahu, because Netanyahu doesn't want any sort of deal, whether compromisable or entirely in its favor, because the prolong of war would be beneficial for the Netanyahu politics domestically.
Definitely, and for his stay in government
for his stay, because he has been facing the corruption charges inside Israel, and there have been mass protests, social protests going on, as well as the protests from the families of the hostages and victims, that because of this prolong of war, Netanyahu is basically putting the life of hostages, Israeli hostages
he is facing at least 3 cases within illegitimate state of Israel. Then that Shin Bet, that de facto secret agency, its head is also in a war with Netanyahu right now. So he is facing a lot of things.
Yes, we have seen the resignation of multiple cabinet ministers as well as multiple chiefs of the intelligence operations and security operations.
Very right, very right. Your point well taken. Basim, US President Donald Trump, although talking about another possible ceasefire, as Faraz rightly pointed out, but he was more interested in categorizing Gaza in credible piece of important real estate, intend to displace Gaza people to other countries, and talking about converting Gaza into a free zone and move Palestinians around to different countries, and said that plenty of countries are going to be or willing to take them or will do that. US President Donald Trump seems to be more sure about it. Really, the situation is like that, or what do you think about it? How do you perceive the situation right now?
Okay, so first things first. When Trump was running for presidency, he promoted himself as the pacifier, the most pacifist president of all times. Is going to bring an end to all the wars that are going on, whether it's Raza, whether it's Ukraine. So the idea is that when we talk about the term free zone itself is a very colonial sort of an ideology. There is a brutality of ideas in coupling with brutality of actions. Now, American ideas and ideology and the foreign policy towards Gaza is primarily dictated by Israel. There's no independent policy when it comes to Middle East, at least. So Gaza is home to over 2 million people. And according to the UN resolution and according to what the people of Gaza want, they don't want to be displaced. So this expansionist idea of Israel is being propagated by Mr. Trump. Gaza is not a piece of land that somebody can come and buy that. So depicting it as a piece of real estate is not Mr. Trump's idea, or this is not something that will bring peace to the region. It is actually the ideology of the greater Israel being propagated by Washington. And it is actually absurd. Palestinians will never agree to that because the core idea is their right to self-determination, their right to live in their own homeland. And that would be abolished.
So, Basim, as you have rightly pointed out about that, on the other hand, there was another move when it comes to the Indonesian president, Prabowo Subianto's offer to evacuate thousands of Gaza refugees on humanitarian grounds and to temporarily reside them in Indonesia till the situation gets normal in Gaza. He held talks with the Palestinian leadership in Turkey during Antalya Diplomacy Forum on April 11th, 2025. But do you really think that the situation is going to be normalized in Gaza, or such move will give Israel and US a plea to permanently expel these Palestinians from Gaza, and they will quote it as an example?
Okay, so I'm not going to speculate on the fact that what was in the Indonesian president's mind before he talked about this, before he proposed such a thing. But despite his talks with the Palestinian leaders at Antalya Diplomacy Forum, the core issue, it remains the same. There is no temporary solution.
No doubt.
To this. There is no temporary solution at all. Secondly, such propositions, such proposals, they strengthen the idea that Palestinians should be moved to some other land. So this is not actually creating a better sort of a situation. It's actually aggravating the situation. So if millions of Palestinians, they are moved to Indonesia, do you believe that that temporary situation will be permanently changed and they will be called back to Gaza again? No, they won't be. So this idea of alternative solutions or alternative places for Palestinians to live, this is basically American and Israeli idea. So I hope and I believe that that the Arab world and all the stakeholders over there, they won't agree to anything of that sort.
Definitely, very right, very right. Rida, Hamas warns that Israeli occupation forces offensive not only kills defenseless civilians, but also makes the fate of hostages uncertain, as still 59 captives are under Hamas custody. While US President Trump said during a cabinet meeting that they are getting close to getting captives back, while Trump's Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, was also quoted in media saying that a very serious deal is taking shape. It's a matter of days. What it means?
I'll start with this thing that regarding the fate of the hostages. I'm not even certain if they're alive or not. I mean, as we look at the intensity of the Israeli airstrikes in Palestine, and the much bombardment that has taken,
Unprecedented
exactly, the
bombing,
unprecedented bombardment in Palestine. I mean, nothing is safe over there. No building is basically has survived. Hospitals, schools, and every building is destroyed. I'm not certain where Hamas might be keeping those hostages alive at the moment. So, judging from the intensity of the strikes, I think the Israelis also believe that the hostages are dead. So that is why they are just continuing with their crusade. But do I believe that the hostages basically are the reason that Israel is going to end this crusade? I don't think so. Even if they negotiate some sort of deal with the Hamas and return the hostages, that might bring peace to Palestinian land for some time, but it will not end the war in a longer run. It needs some better sort of plan of action over there. Regarding American, you can say, plan regarding the hostages versus the Palestinians, actually, it is a very sad fact that the 59 hostages are of a great significance for the United States. However, the civilians and Palestinians, which include infants dying every day, are of no significance for the United States.
Very unfortunate, really.
Exactly.
It's a very unfortunate part.
Exactly. So whether whatever plan which is basically brewing in United States right now regarding the situation in Israel pertaining to the hostages is going to work in a longer run or not, I would say, in my opinion, it won't. The hostages, if they have survived, even if they are returned, this will not be the, you can say, end of the war in Palestine.
Definitely, you are absolutely right. Faraz, as Rida pointed out, what about any sort of a prospect of ceasefire or the talks going on in Cairo, Egypt, as Hamas was hopeful earlier and still they are, that there might be the ceasefire deal soon. After the failure of the first one, because Israel is actually the linchpin, and Israel has all the sabotage tactics and renewed that genocidal invasion of Gaza with a plan. So, do you think that negotiators and mediators, including the US and Qatar beside Egypt, would be able to salvage a kind of a stalled ceasefire agreement, either the last one or a new one with Israel, as they are trying to bridge gaps between the sides? But another scenario is that Hamas says that they will free the hostages if end to Gaza war guaranteed. End to Gaza war. It is not about ceasefire. So while Israel actually says that free all hostages first and then the ceasefire. So end of war and a ceasefire. So how do you see that?
Well, Faisal, in a brief, I am very much pessimistic towards the end of this war or the implementation of some sort of ceasefire. Why? Because if we look in detail, there were some certain conditions on the behalf of Israel. The first one was to free the hostages. Hamas agreed that if Israel guarantees the end of war, end of its strikes in Gaza, they will free all the hostages. Hamas didn't even reciprocate with its own demand of freedom of its soldiers from Israel. It has limited itself to just the end of the air strikes and war of Israel on Gaza. So that was the first condition that Hamas has partially agreed, but we have seen that from the Israeli side there have been no flexibility. The second thing is that Hamas would not partake in the governance of Gaza after the war. Hamas has agreed that it would not participate in the governance model of Gaza. That seemed very unlikely just a couple of months ago. Now the third Israeli demand is that to completely dismantle the military infrastructure of Hamas, because they have been so far unsuccessful in dismantling Hamas militarily through their airstrikes. So that is the condition which Hamas is not ready to accept, because it is the only hope, how slight it may be, but it is the only hope that for the Gazans, for the Palestinians, that they have the capability to at least strike back to the Israeli atrocities. And once if Hamas would completely dismantle its military infrastructure, that Israel would be given a free hand and there would not even a slightest obstacle on the path of Israel to just eliminate Gaza from the map of the world, and that would be catastrophic. So this is the last point, the dismantling of Hamas military infrastructure, that is being problematic for both mediators as well as Israel in coming to some sort of conclusion.
Okay, your point well taken. Syed, Basim, Raza, despite growing calls for an arms embargo on Israel, France and other Western countries, including United States, continuously selling weapons to Israel for ongoing Gaza genocide, even military assistance is going on, even the grants are going on, but also they are also at the same time condemning Israel's renewed offensive against innocent Palestinians, calling for an immediate ceasefire. French President Emmanuel Macron said the sufferings of the Palestinians must end and announced that France is preparing to recognize a Palestinian statehood within a few months. But de facto Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu responded by saying that French president is gravely mistaken. Is it not the hypocritical attitude of the world right now, particularly the Western world towards Palestine and the separate standards for Israel right now?
So when we talk about the case of United States in comparison to Europe, there's a huge difference. When it comes to US, the American foreign policy is entirely aligned on the bidding of Israel. So Americans, they're actually propagating their foreign policy in that light. Mr. Trump, during his election campaigns and all of that, he talked about not giving money to foreign countries in terms of military aid, in terms of arms, and all of that. Since his joining, since he resuming the seat of the president, he gave almost $14 billion worth of military aid to Israel and $4 billion extra in terms of weaponry. Now coming to France and the Europeans actually, they stopped having a say in international politics since 1991. The graph went downside since the German unification. Europeans, they don't have a strong say in such a scenario, but although they believe in human rights, they believe in the liberal international order, liberal institutional order, but again, in practice, they're pressurized. In practice, they have to act in accordance with the American directions. Up till now, we're seeing that, despite the fact that there was many corrosive sort of incidents between Europe and United States, but still they're acting like that. When it comes to Germany, they talk about historical burden. When it comes to France, we see a hypocrisy. France, in 2021 alone, it provided more than 300 million euros worth of arms to Israel. And on the other hand, Mr. Macron, he's talking about human rights, he's talking about ceasefire, he's talking about recognizing the state of Palestine. So the whole crux actually is that France, like many other Western powers, is caught between the strategic relationship with Israel in the light of the directions of the United States and its stated support for a two-state solution.
Very important, very important. Your point well taken, Basim. Faraz, what about the Israel's growing invasion on Syria? That beside airstrikes on different strategic locations in Syria, like air bases in Hama and Hamas, Israel continuously capturing Syrian lands from southern region, other than Golan Heights, and then growing tensions between Turkey and Israel because of Ankara's influence in Syria. Now the negotiations are on between Syria and Turkey for a joint defense pact and accusing Israel of causing chaos and feeding terrorism, while Israel leveling allegations on Turkey for its negative role and threatened Syria's interim president Ahmed al-Shara that he would pay a very heavy price if he allowed hostile forces to enter his country. So how do you see that?
Well, Faisal, I think we have discussed it before that
yes.
Syria is going to become the Afghanistan of the Middle East. The very reason is
very unfortunate.
The very reason of that is that, okay, politically we can say that HTS has basically transformed itself from being a slightly moderate faction from an extremist faction. But their ground forces...
You're talking about Hayat Tahrir al-Sham.
Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. Okay. But their ground forces, their political base, from where they get their strength in terms of military, in terms of creating a revolt against Bashar al-Assad, that very person on ground is pretty much radical as of now. They do not understand the political diplomacy, or they do not understand the international structure, because they have been inculcated the idea of extremism and religiosity and all that. So those factions, there is a higher chance that HTS would be divided into splinter factions, and those splinter factions would act on their own independently, and they may cause chaos and havoc for the neighboring states, and the foremost of that is Israel because of the ongoing onslaught of Gaza. So the ground forces might the different videos have been surfaced up where the ground forces or the soldiers there are basically threatening the security of Israel, and that is why Israel has basically devastated the entire military structure of Syria back in December, and now they have been basically not only
still they are attacking on very important strategic and military bases which are existing right now, but unfortunately damaged earlier.
Exactly.
But still Israel is striking hard on that.
Yes.
Really.
So they are basically not limiting to Golan Heights. They are basically trying to replicate the Gaza plan into the southern Syria
Yes,
to create a buffer zone there as well to repel those hostile forces. And Turkey will face the music if it signs, in my humble opinion, if it signs the Joint Defense Pact with Ahmad al-Shara or HTS Syrian government, because that would put Turkey in confrontation with Israel, and those scale of confrontation could be escalated like we have seen the confrontation between Israel and Iran during the presidency of Bashar al-Assad. Both of these states come to the forefront in attacking each other, so that could be replicated in case of Turkey and Israel in the case of Ahmad al-Shara.
Your point well taken. Rida, what you get from the Israeli de facto Prime Minister Netanyahu's remarks about Turkey and Syria during his visit to United States, that he don't want Syria being used by anyone, including Turkey, as a base to attack Israel. As Faraz rightly pointed out, because there are lots of videos we have gone through that those were surfaced, Turkey has great relationship with the United States. These are the words of Netanyahu, I'm not saying anything. And President Trump has a great relationship with the leader of Turkey. Netanyahu said that we discuss how we can avoid this conflict. He used the word conflict. And we don't have any better interlocutor than the President of the United States. So how do you see, because he is talking about conflict with Turkey?
This visit basically, you can say, reveals several, you can say, undercurrents. And other than that, diplomatic calculations, which basically includes the parties Turkey, United States and Syria. Basically, the security concerns over Syria in regards to Israel is basically the de facto, you can say, Prime Minister of Israel does not want Syria to become a launch pad of an attack on Israel. And for that purpose, it does not want any kind of influence over there, whether it is Iranian proxies or the partners or Kurdish factions over there or the Turkey-backed, you can say, groups over there. So that is why the PM or Prime Minister of Israel is basically laying a lot of emphasis over the fact that Syria should remain a zone which is demilitarized zone. He does not want it to become militarized. I mean, it was basically a sigh of relief for Israel when the regime of Bashar al-Assad ended over there, because it was basically providing a strong hold for Iran over there. And now Israel, Turkey coming closer to the, you can say, borders of Israel is basically alarming for Israeli security, you can say, status. So that is why Israel is basically using United States as the mediator over here, because it knows that the terms between Erdogan and Trump are very cordial. And he knows that Trump might be able to, you can say, convince.
But Rida, it was an old plan with the illegitimate state of Israel and its de facto Prime Minister Netanyahu that there must have to be the buffer zones in every region, in every area, not only in Gaza, but also in Lebanon as well. And that was created, and more is created after the invasion of the Israeli forces into Lebanon against the actions of Hezbollah. And then that was capturing Golan Heights, or the parts of it, and then whole of the Golan Heights, and now entering into Syria means the same. So your point well taken, and no doubt about that, that United States, Israel is actually using
because Israel is basically trying to send a message over here that we are watching you closely. So any kind of action taken by Turkey will be considered as, you can say, direct attack, whether it comes indirectly through Syria. It will be considered a direct attack on the
So there could be a conflict
Yes,
between
it could be a
Israel
conflict.
and
Yes.
Turkey.
Yes.
In Syria, there would be, might be not the direct conflict,
Yes.
but there would be indirect conflict
Indirect
between
conflict,
both.
exactly.
No doubt about that. Saeed, Basim, what's the significance of the Syria's interim president, Ahmed al-Shara's visit right now to the Gulf states, particularly after visiting United Arab Emirates and meeting with the Emirati President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. Just visited Qatar, held talks with the Qatari Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. Meanwhile, Lebanese President Joseph Aoun also met with the Qatari leadership. On the other hand, earlier Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam visited Syria and met with the Syrian interim president Shara in Damascus to reboot their ties because they were worsened during the Assad regime. And now they are trying to reboot it. While Saudi Arabia guaranteed actually paying Syrian World Bank debt, that is around $15 million in arrears which are left with Syria. And it is important to help Syria in reconstruction and rebuilding through the international financial system, international financial institutions to repay that debt. So how do you see this whole gambit which is going on right now in the Gulf, particularly related to Syria and also to Lebanon?
Okay, first of all, when it comes to Mr. Mohammed al-Shara, I am very skeptical. I don't believe that he's going to transform Syria into a very peaceful and a very developing sort of state. First things first. Secondly, there was a disruption of balance of power in the Middle East. Iran's axis of resistance, it was decimated by Israel and United States. There was a gap. Bashar al-Assad Saab, he couldn't actually, create some defenses so he can actually repel the forces of such rebellion. So he was replaced. Mr. Golani, he came, and this idea, this problem actually was, I would say, recharged by the United States and Israel. When Mr. Jolani, he captured Syria, Damascus, we saw a video of Netanyahu. He praised the Syrian rebels. He praised HTS. And then he started bombing them. So the issue here is that Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, all of these states, they actually want to fill the gap that the Iranians have left. Now, it's an opportunity economically too, so they want to invest economically too inside Syria and help in the rebuilding of it. And the product would be a state which is balancing for their favor in front of Iran. Secondly, and most importantly, the decimation of Iranians' axis of resistance, the weakness of Hezbollah, the weakness of Hamas, and the expulsion of Bashar from Syria, all of this weakened the balance of power inside the whole region of Middle East too. And Saudis and Qataris and UAE, they're also very well aware of that. And they actually want to create some balance inside their region so that they cannot let Israel become the hegemon of the region, which it's aspiring to be. Secondly, the goal of Israel, we've seen that they've talked about it in Knesset all the time, expansionist.
Definitely.
We want to capture Syria.
You are absolutely right, Basim, because it is very important to create balance in that region, particularly when it comes to Syria, because otherwise there are fears that Syria, not only there would be some splinting factions within Syria, or there are lots of fears that most of the experts are believing in now that might be Syria is going to be divided into pieces, because that is going to be very dangerous for the region. Syria must have to be intact, and we, Pakistan, whole of the countries, they are wishing well that Syria must have to, Syrian sovereignty and integrity must have to be intact, and there must have to be a stability in Syria. Rida, how do you see, when we are talking about, as Basim rightly pointed out, about the balanced approach and creating balance within Syria right now, how do you see how much it is important the US President visit to the Gulf states, particularly it is the first ever visit of the Saudi Arabia, particularly in early May. with brief stops also planned in Qatar and United Arab Emirates. And some reports suggest that Trump might land in Turkey as well because of the grave situation, but it is not confirmed yet. So do you think that it's just an economic type of visit, attracting some of the investment from Saudi Arabia and rest of the states, or whether he will also talk to have some sort of a peace in Middle East, particularly end of war in Gaza, a genocidal war, and have peace in the overall, like Syria, Lebanon, and all other states right now. When illegitimate state of Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz, said, and very clearly said, that Israeli troops will remain in Gaza, they are not going anywhere, from Lebanon and Syria indefinitely. Will that not, they are not going to evacuate these areas that have been already cleared, according to them, and seized. So it means the intentions are very clear. Whatever occupied, it is not going to be returned, or these forces are not going to withdraw from these areas.
As you have mentioned, that this is the very first ever, this is going to be the very first visit of the United States President Donald Trump to the Middle East, and I'm sure and I'm certain that it is going to go beyond some sort of, you can say, economic interests or investment goals. It is going to be, maybe I would say, dual agenda over here. It is going to be economics plus diplomacy over here. Well, regarding the economic interest, obviously we know that it is a basically energy-rich region. So United States definitely has its interest over there, and Donald Trump is definitely going to explore those interests over there. But alongside that, Donald Trump is going to basically be talking about the Gaza war over there, because of the spillover effect of Gaza war in the Middle East is basically quite, you can say, challenging for the other, you can say, stakeholders in the Middle East as well. Well, United States will have to build alliances over there, and it has to basically rethink the situation over there. Then Gaza genocide and the political urgency over there. The Arab states are quite vocal at the moment over there, and they are basically urgently seeking some sort of, you can say, end to this genocide over there. And for that, United States has to show some sort of seriousness. But here comes the Netanyahu and Trump dilemma, where United States, maybe like Faraz has previously mentioned, that the administration might be serious about coming to some sort of ceasefire, but the Netanyahu's administration is not basically. I mean, the statement, as you have mentioned, that they want to stay over there indefinitely, basically is basically in conflict with what United States is trying to achieve.
Your point well taken, Rida. Faraz, very quickly, because we have run short of time, so this is the last one. What are the prospects of international conference to recognize the Palestinian statehood in June 2025 under Saudi Arabia and France as a co-host? Because the initiative on solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, it is claimed that it will be prepared in close coordination with the regional partners, including Egypt, while French President supported the comprehensive reconstruction plan carved by Arab League, particularly by Egypt, unveiled on March 4th, 2025. So how do you see that?
Well, we need to understand that France has the colonial legacy in that part of the region, and since the ascendancy of President Trump in the US, France has basically tried to enforce itself and the enforcement of European strategic autonomy, because France considered that Europe can stay as an independent player and can enforce its will, and that France can spearhead that all process. So that is why France is pretty much interested in resolving the Palestinian crisis and the establishment of Palestinian state in consensus with the regional partners or regional states. But whether it is going to be viable and practical on ground, I think that is a big question mark.
Your point well taken. Thank you very much, Faraz, for your presence here in the studios. Thank you very much, Rida, for your presence. And thank you very much, Syed, Basim, for your presence online. Viewers, as you have just listened to the list, it is important that right now the first step must have to be that this war must have to be stopped. There must have to be a ceasefire. And the supplies for the Gaza, innocent Gaza people, because they need food, they need water, they need medicine, urgent medical treatment, and fuel as well. That is important to have electricity and means of communication. So this is very important right now. It is clear that Israel is, as an occupier, never want and don't want to end this war, unfortunately. And it is Israel which is dictating right now the Western countries, including United States. And it is unfortunate that the world P5, the permanent five of the Security Council, the permanent five countries, they are unable to do anything, unfortunately, to stop this genocidal ethnic cleansing war, the war crimes in Gaza and even in West Bank. And realization of the UNSC Charter and its resolutions to have an independent state of Palestine in Middle East. But unfortunately, it's all going on because of Netanyahu's intent and genocidal intent. And unfortunately, that Rivera plan, then the free zone, what President Trump is saying, real estate and the US peace forces, these are all the vague things which are actually coming from Washington, unfortunately, without any prepared background work. And these are the wishes of the President Trump, along with the de facto Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu. Unfortunately, Hamas is still trying hard to have the peace deal and have end to war, but Israel is just saying that a little pause or a ceasefire for a limited period to get the hostages from Hamas. And otherwise, they are not supporting the end of war. It is all unfortunate which is going on. Right now, Syrian situation is getting worse, and the balanced approach is needed. Turkey and Israel is going to have some sort of a conflict, or might be a hot pursuit in between at the Syrian land, and that is going to be another disaster. It is important that when President Trump visits the Gulf states, and that is going to be in May, he has to talk on the peace in Middle East, because this is very important. But we all know the intentions of the United States as a partner with the partner in crime and the war which is going on in Gaza by the illegitimate state of Israel. The International Conference on Palestinian Statehood in June 2025 is also very important, but we have to go through the intentions of France and the rest of the Western countries, how much they are serious in having arm embargo on Israel, then recognition of the Palestinian state, and of course the peace in Middle East and end to war in Gaza, and annexations of the West Bank. That is very important, because an independent Palestinian state is the only solution in Middle East if we want to have peace in that region. This is all from today's Foresight. It's time to sign off. Allah Hafiz.